New at 4, downtown Appleton is looking to become more of a cultural destination after receiving a grant from the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation. Taylor Zebel explains how the grant will be used to help attract more people to the city.
City data shows that Appleton is losing people and businesses. The $450,000 grant is the first step in hopes that creativity can reverse the trend. The grant will help support the local creative community and economy. Appleton Downtown Incorporated, Trout Museum of Arts, and Generator are partnering to bring in 20 creative professionals from outside of the state, including artists, musicians, filmmakers, and more. The artists will be given a $2,500 moving stipend and a $10,000 grant as an investment into their practice. They will be eligible to participate in an accelerator program where they learn how to strengthen the business side of creative practice.
The thing that I'm really interested in with this grant is that, even though it's not giving funds directly to Wisconsin artists, I think this is providing a blueprint for how we can get additional funding for creative professionals in Wisconsin.
The goal is to have the 20 creative professionals move to Appleton and finished with the 7-week accelerator program in the span of 18 months. Reporting in Appleton, Taylor Zebel, Action 2 News.